Okay, today we're going to give continuation to the part, book 2, chapter 4 or 6, 6 of the Spirit's book, the book that deals with life in the spiritual world. And in this part, as I told last week, the Kardec's really questioning, is trying to understand how is it to live without a physical body? When you leave this physical body behind and go back to the spiritual world, how is life? How do we think? How do we see things? How do we hear things? All the common things that we take for granted as incarnate spirit, what Kardec is asking. Okay, do you see? Do you hear? Do you have perceptions? This is starting at question 237. Spirits, perceptions, sensations, and suffering of spirits is the topic. We covered up to 239 last week. Yeah. I just want to recap very quickly that again, Kardec's really trying to get at the best to us, to the best that the spirits can tell us what is life in the spiritual world. And once you leave this physical body behind, you go back home with our true home, the spiritual life. How do we manage with that? Do you eat? Do you drink? What happens to us there? Basically, that's what Kardec's trying to grasp from the spirits here. One thing that I said last week, I wanted to keep in mind at all times that because this answer will be repeated over and over and over again, there are two things that I have to always keep in mind. That all things in our life, physical and spiritual, is relative to our moral and intellectual progress. How much can a spirit see, do, travel? It will be relative to the degree of purification of that spirit. It will be how much of the spirit has evolved both intellectually and morally. Many answers is given here in potential. The spirit has the potential of doing this, but not all spirits are able to do this and that. Again, this example that I always use, guys are here, tired to hear it. Does humans swim? The answer has to be yes. Does every human swim? No, there's a lot of people who did not learn how to swim. A lot of people was afraid of water. A lot of people did not have the opportunity to learn to swim. But if the question is placed, does humans swim? The answer has to be yes, because the potential is there for every human to swim. There is always exception, okay? I don't like the word every, but in potential, humans are able to swim, so humans can swim, but not all of them will do so. In the set of questions here, we have to keep that in mind. In potential, yes, every human being can play an instrument. Not all play, I don't play anything. But in potential, everybody can have potential of playing a musical instrument. Let's be clear here what you're talking about. And another thing to keep in mind, when we leave this physical body, all of our senses, all our perceptions are extremely augmented. This physical body is like a heavy obstacle to our senses, to our perceptions. The example I used last week is gloves. You have your tactile phones now, normal hands, normal does not have any anomaly and a neuropathy. You have our perceptions, the cold, hot, pulsations, the thing is soft, it's not soft, you touch and we perceive that, right? If you put a surgical gloves, the one the doctors use during surgery, it will be still quite highly sensitive. It's still not as good as without anything, but you'll be able to perceive and sense a lot of things. If you put a heavier kind of gloves, winter gloves, snow gloves, your sensation is extremely limited. There is that dense thing between you and your hand that limits you to sense the true reality of the things that you are touching. Is it cold? It's hot? It's soft? It's not soft? You'll be limited. You put over meetings, basically you feel nothing. And that's the goal, the objective actually that you put that on, right? So the physical body acts as like a heavy glove to our sense, to our sensations, to our perceptions. So when you leave the physical body, everything is augmented. Now, is that always good? No, it's neutral. It depends, what do you do with it, right? Everything is neutral. It depends where you are. It depends where your conscience leads you. It depends the state of peace that you have with your unconscious. If you have, you're very troubled by all the mistakes you have done, it's going to be augmented as well. We're going to feel more. You're going to, they would suffer or like, but you have greater challenge because of it. And if you're more in peace with your unconscious, the perceptions will also be augmented, and the peace will be also more augmented. So it's not good or bad. Good or bad is the state that we find ourselves, right? I think there's three things important for us to keep in mind at all times, okay? Because most of the questions, I'm going to repeat the same thing here, right? Just few things. So I'm going to leave that to be really understood amongst us. Without the physical body, our perception is greater. But it's not good or bad. It depends on the spirit itself. Everything is dependent on the spirit itself. And how much you can experience or how much you can enjoy from our experience, how much you can suffer from our experiences, it depends on the progress, moral and intellectual of that spirit. Okay? And one more thing that I'm going to leave now for everyone from the beginning here is the question regarding limits. Only God is limitless. Only God is limitless. Even the highest of the more evolved spirits have reached complete purification. They are called the Christs. They are also limited. Only God is limitless. Only God is infinite. So there is a separation, a veil between the most pure spirits and God. And one of that veil of separation is that God is limitless and only God is limitless. Okay? We can go into a philosophical discussion of what that is, but I don't think I have time for it. So, question 237, I think is very important for us to repeat, and it's the only one that I'm going to repeat, is when, actually, Philip, you can read for us, 237. Philip? Philip, you're unmuted. Did I mute you?
Okay. You want me to read?
Yes, please.
Okay. 237. When it returns to the spirit world, does the soul still possess the perceptions it had in its lifetime? Yes. And others that it did not possess because its body obscured them. Intelligence is an attribute of the spirit, but it is manifested more freely when unhindered.
Thanks. So the reason I want to repeat this question is, for one, to reinforce that the body obscured our perceptions while they have this physical body. And without this physical body, we don't have that obstruction, of course. But the second part is extremely important. Intelligence is an attribute of the spirit, but it's manifested more freely when unhindered. Why are the spirit mentioned intelligence over here? And intelligence here, we can use both intelligence, intellectual intelligence, the pure knowledge, the piling and piling and knowledge of culture that you acquire throughout the millennia that you are trying to do so. Also moral intelligence, the intelligence of the heart, as Jesus used to say, right? Just having perceptions, have senses, having sensations, it only carries a value when applied to intelligence. And how do you do it with it? The intelligences allow us to transform the sensations, the perceptions into something, right? Vision. If you see a flower, a pretty flower, you may think of nature, you may bring a thought of peace, something nice, because you identify it throughout the time you understood, you learned that there's a representation of the flower have for you. It's a moment brings a moment of tranquility, a moment of peace, anything else. Someone may see a flower as a moment of pain because it was stung by a bee when it picked up a flower. And was unable throughout the time to liberate herself from that moment of suffering. So that intelligence is somewhat imprisoned by that moment that got stung by a bee. And instead of looking at a flower and feel good about it, he feels fear, he remembers a moment of pain. That has to do with intelligence. That's why the Spirit says over here the term intelligence. You're not about the Spirit. Okay? And I wanted to consider that intelligence. Most of the questions that we have here, especially when it comes with the moral and intellectual progress. Any questions, any comment? Okay, so 238 is asked if the spirits have limited perception and knowledge of if they know everything. Again, only God's limitless. There are spirits in the spiritual world right now that knows a lot less than what we know about life in the spiritual world. There are spirits in the spiritual world right now that do not believe in this in a spiritual world, and there are spirits right now that are sublime, completely pure at the level of Christ. Okay, so the closer we approach perfection, as the Spirit says over here, the more we know. Okay. We can use a comparison here with our academic years. We'd expect that a kindergarten knows a lot less than someone in a university right now. In a chronological aging in the academic progress, the kindergarten or the middle school would know a lot less, would expect to know a lot less than a graduate student of a university. Something in the spiritual world, but here we're talking about moral and intellectual growth. Okay? The spirits understand the first principle of things. Only the ones who reach perfection. Only the ones that are able to understand God at a level that we cannot even imagine right now. But not all things are revealed, even to those spirits. And I don't know if the principle of all things is included here, okay? And then we start the day at 2:40. Kardec asks us about time. Philip, just a minute.
Do spirits perceive time in the same manner as we do? No. And this is why you do not always understand us when you are trying to establish dates and time periods. A spirit's life is outside the realm of time as we perceive it. The idea of time is lost on them, and centuries, which seem so long to us, appear to be only a few instances lapsing into eternity for them, just as the variations of the ground would fade and disappear to someone high in space.
So even for us incarnate, the perception of time is somewhat relative, even for us ourselves. If this meeting right now is very boring, it's gonna take a long time to finish. We're gonna look at the clock every minute and think that every minute takes 5 minutes. If you are enjoying it, it's not gonna be long enough. You blink and it's over. It's relative to us. We just finished the Olympics right now. When you see that the difference in a gold medal and a silver medal in some of the things was measured in thousandths of second. That for our naked eyes seems to be a tie. And they'll say, oh no, so they were the first place with a thousandth of second. There's a difference in a gold and a silver medal. The difference of qualifying to the final of that event and not qualifying or being one of the 8 is a matter of 2 seconds. Because with 2 seconds, could even compete for a medal. That's how relative time can be, right? If you work in archaeology, when you're talking about millions of years, it's like, oh, it was nothing. It was just 3 million years ago. It's nothing. It's nothing. In history, a million years is a big thing, but centuries, it's not that much also. You're talking about this doctrine. It's not even 200 years old. It's a baby in terms of ideologies yet, right? It's taking not even first steps yet, not even 200 years yet. It's nothing. But if you say, oh, somebody lived 120 years with that, lived that long, right? So everything's relative, even here for us. To that, we can add, see the spiritual answers over here. No, that's Cornel of Kardec, I'm sorry. A spirit life is outside of the realm of time as we perceive it. Kardec's telling us that there is a different timing in the spiritual world as we have here, okay? We invented a measurement of time, right? We measure time in accordance to the movement of Earth around itself and around the sun, right? We invented that, right? It's an amazing invention. Now that was very useful, something very good for us, right? But the time is time regardless, right? Measure or don't measure it. We developed a measurement of time in accordance the movement of the Earth, seconds, years, right? Month, whatever. Décio Yolanda, in his first book, it's not translated. It's called Transcendental Physiology. He brings a theory that light travels faster in the spiritual realm than in the physical realm. And that would make a completely difference in terms of how we measure time in itself. And he gives us a whole physical or physic equation to justify his theory, which I do not understand. I'm following physics. But he says that light travels faster in the spiritual realm, which kind of makes sense because there will be a less density for light to cross. okay? So only that would make a tremendous difference. So when the spirits speak to us regarding time, we have to take that into consideration. And that's why they say over here that, and that's why we not always understand when they are talking to us in relationship to dates, times, and periods. So if you try to talk, let's say, the periods of the eras of Earth, that you may use a measurement that is completely different of what we use here, right? And since their word is the true word, chances are that their measurement is superior than our measurement, okay? But there is always will be a difficulty for them to talk to us, really, especially dates. And if you see higher spirits does not use date, they're not gonna come say in the year 2027, no. They say it's coming in the future, in the near future, in the distant future, but not gonna give a date. It's not gonna say in the year 3000, 2021 on a Friday, June 17. No, they're never going to do that. Because one, we are making our destiny future, okay? And we may accelerate or derail some of the plans that they have for us, right? And two, because the measurement of time is somewhat different than what we have here. Does it make sense? You have a question, Paco?
Okay, so good, yeah.
Okay, I thought you had a question.
Elmo,
Mm-hmm.
it's Daniela.
Any-
I watched a movie not so long ago. I won't remember the movie. It's not old. And they are my memory is terrible, but there is these three astronauts that they have to, their mission is to find a planet that they can start life, like human life, because Earth is doomed, almost destroyed. And then they, in their search, they get into a planet, and then something goes wrong with their spaceship. They can't go back. And then by the time they get it fixed, it took maybe 10 or 15 minutes for them to leave that planet. And in their conversation, they're talking that on Earth, if I'm not wrong, 37 years already had gone by. And in their planet, on their watch time, it was just 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. But on Earth, it was almost 40 years gone. So anyway, I would assume something like that, like the references are very different.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect comparison for us to make, because even if you travel very far from Earth, there will be a complete discrepancy if you bring your watch wherever you're going. What the watch is pointing out, is showing over there is not going to be the same what we are seeing here on Earth. That is scientific. That's just astrophysics. And that's a very good comparison. Can you imagine then in a different realm, how different that could be? Okay, 241.
241.
Yes, please.
Do spirits have a more genuine and precise view of the present than us? Compared to yours, their view is what sight is in comparison to blindness. They see what you do not see and therefore judge differently than you do. However, we must remind you that this depends on their degree of elevation.
Okay. So I start with the end. We must remind you that this depends on their degree of evolution, okay? It's gonna come back over and over and over again. And they don't want to feel us bad, right? To say that their sight compared to us as if you were blind. Again, the physical body is this heavy, dense obstacle to our senses. Like the horses that you have to put those things on the side of the eyes so they want to see straight. Our vision is like that, if not worse. Imagine an spirit with a 360 vision, right? Instead of being just like few angles, have 360 degrees of vision. That will be the vision of the spirits. But again, it depends. Remember that the perispirit, the spiritual body, is also matter. And the spiritual body, you be more or less dense in accordance to our moral intellectual progress. So we might end up in the spiritual world with such a dense spirit or spiritual body that will not allow us to have the clarity of vision that a more evolved spirit will have. Therefore, it's very important that we remind ourselves that it depends on our degree of elevation. The more evolved you are, the better is your ability of perceiving and seeing things, and more important, of judging things. The spirits over here. They see what you do not see, and therefore judge differently than what you do. And that is one of the reasons that Jesus tells us, do not judge. Because your range of vision, of perception of the reality is extremely limited. Only those who higher spirits are able to have that high perception of things and have a much clearer view of the complete circumstances and that lead someone to be what they are or to do what they've done than we are. That's why don't judge. Leave for those who are able to have a better analysis of the situation, because we are not those individuals. And again, we can tie this to 41 with intelligence over there, right? Maybe you have the perception of seeing things with a much more clarity than what we have here. But what do we do with that? If you don't have the moral intellectual progress, you may misuse that, what you see, what you view. You may use it for the wrong purpose, right? So divine benevolence makes things in a way that you can only achieve a degree of clarity when you are ready for it. You can only see things with a degree of clarity when you are going to make good use of that perception. Otherwise, I'm not going to give to you. In Portuguese, there is a saying that I know people laugh at me when I try it, but I have no shame and I'll say it again. Let's translate it again. That God does not give wings to snakes. Deus não dá asas a cobras. Right? People don't understand the meaning of it, but basically it's exactly that. If you are not able to make good use of a tool, God is not going to give to you. If God gives to you because you are able to make good use of it. Now, you may choose to make bad use of it. You have free will, right? The atomic power was not meant for destruction. It was meant to provide power to hospitals and things, not to kill people. But we have free will. You misuse the tools that is given to us, but it's not given to us for the wrong reasons, right? So we will have the greater perception of things when we are able to make good use of it. Okay?
So Elmo, can I say that mediums that usually that when the mediums can see things that we can't, So they are more elevated than us?
No,
Not in
absolutely
this
not.
case?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. It might actually be a trial. It might actually be an expiation. To be seeing things that no one sees and have to, have to live with that weight on your shoulder. Not at all. Leadership is organic faculty. Okay, yeah, you cannot put it over here. Yeah. Any questions? Okay, 242.
How do spirits acquire knowledge of the past? And is this knowledge unlimited? The past, when we focus on it, is perceived as though it were the present, just like when you recall something over the course of your exam. The main difference is that we remember things that are currently erased from your memory, as the material shroud shielding your intelligence no longer obscures our view. However, spirits do not know everything. For example, they know nothing of their creation.
Again, it be dependent on how developed morally intellectual we are. Even he as an incarnate spirit, as we retrieve in time, remember things of the past, is almost as if we go back in that moment in past, right? As an example, when I'm thinking of as a child, my vacations at my grandma's house, and I can actually smell the wooden stove smoke. It's almost like being there, right? If I think hard enough of it, we can regress into that time and almost have that experience all over again. If we can do that with the limitations imposed by the physical body, we cannot even start to imagine how it is for a spirit without a physical body, without the limitations of the brain that stores, or doesn't store, but connects memories while you are incarnate. And even imagine how a more elevated spirit would be, think of the past and pretty much being back on that past, right? Chico Xavier on the historical books of Emmanuel, the life of Emmanuel, he was taken back to the events that was happening there. He was taken back to witness Publio Lentulus living his life 2,000 years ago, or 50 years after, was like being in there and like being a spectator witnessing all the events happening. It's like sitting, now I'm imagining, sitting in a movie theater and watch that scene happen in front of you. It's like being there. But you all do that with the potential of the mind, right? Because the time has passed. You have the potential to retrieve those moments, to go back there where it happened. But even though the higher spirits having that ability are limited to many things, including they do not know nothing about creation. The creation being reserved to God. So far as much as I know, and God only. Okay?
Elmo.
Yep.
I always think about this, let's say, method. I don't know if it's the right word that you just mentioned from Emmanuel, like how he goes back, and it's as if he's reliving everything, because in the books there is every single detail of the events, plus he knows what everybody's feeling and everybody was saying, and like the intentions of their thoughts. Like it's not only his side of everything, right? It's everybody else. So the mind is projected back to that time, but at the same on the same way, or it's as if it's the time has not really passed.
That's right. The other day, João gave the Holy Stephen, the book, the life of Paul of Tarsus, to a person to read, and the person asked him an interesting question was, how does Emmanuel knows what Paul was thinking? I mean, we can document the events, what's happening there, but how do you know what he was thinking, right? And I remember one interview of with Chico Xavier, I don't remember to whom, in which he was telling that Emmanuel has told him that for those books, there's tremendous amount of research as well. I mean, and in Paul and Steve's case, he had dialogues with Paul. Paul had sent him in writing things of those things of what's happening to him in his life at this time for that book. So there is first thing, Emmanuel at his level of progress are able to retrieve from his memory everything has happened to him when he was Publius Lentulus, right? He can say that himself. He has that degree of moral and intellectual progress. True, there is the hard work, the research, like any other writer over here gonna write about anything else, a tremendous amount of research and talk to people who were there, who know this and that. That's basically how was able to even put in the thoughts of some most individuals in those books. It's a lot of research and is a tremendous ability of retrieving past experiences. Because everything that happens to us those experiences belong to us. They are not lost. Thank God at all levels we can remember them because they are pretty nasty, right? We're not be able to remember them. I mean, even for who is now Emmanuel, the experience of Lentulus, what he has done, it's very nasty. But Emmanuel today is able to retrieve those memories and perhaps even laugh about it. And I'm like, oh man, did I really do this? Right? Which for us would be a torture, but he's so elevated at this point that he can do it his best, but we would not. We probably would go crazy.
Sorry. Do you think Pope is about the same level as Emmanuel?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's not going to make any difference in my life.
It's
so far away.
Yeah, it's not going to make a difference. But if Paul is at a higher level right now, remember the older high spirit that can come down and talk to us. Right? We cannot go up then at our pleasure, but they can come down to us anytime. So if Paul is a few degrees up higher there, he can always come down and talk to Emmanuel. But it's a good question. I don't know. It's so far distant. I'm still at Xavier Mother Teresa level 10 times higher than I'll keep at that. Danny?
I didn't hear her question.
Well, her question is if I think if Emmanuel and Paul of Tarsus are pretty much at the same level of progress. And my answer is I have no idea.
So Emmanuel, but the book has several people.
Yeah.
So he would interview like everybody or almost everybody.
You don't have to interview everybody, right? If you writing a book, you can interview the friend of that person. That friend may tell you things here and there. And again, it's a work of research. There's a lot of time spend in the libraries over there in the spiritual world and talking to people and receiving Paul messages directly, not to put that book together. It's really hard for us to consider the standard.
Yeah, because he puts dialogue in it. So like even if you interview the dialogue, it's like it could be almost fictional. You know what I mean? Like if he's either there seeing everything happening, or he's in a different timeline going back, interviewing, putting the pieces together. It's like maybe like a real author here for us, right? So we interview people, we figure it out, and then we write the biography. So based on the what people were saying, the dialogue went that way. From my understanding, Emmanuel is there as well. At that, I don't know. My mind goes a little crazy with this subject.
Yeah, but in the case of Emmanuel and Paul, they were contemporaneous, right? Pluvio Lentulus actually had the opportunity to meet Paul at one time also, and was actually impressed with Paul when they met. It was still Pluvio Lentulus and still the Pride senator, but he was quite impressed with the strength of Paul when they met. And Paul was already Paul already. It was no longer Saul when they met. But yeah, I think it's so far ahead of us to try to really understand how they're able to do all that. Yeah. 242? Did you read 242? No.
We did 242.
Oh, yeah.
243?
Yeah, just a second, I'm bringing it up for you. Yep.
Do spirits see the future? That also depends on their degree of perfection. They often can partially see it, but even when they see it more clearly, they are not always permitted to reveal it. When they see it, it seems like the present to them. A spirit sees the future more clearly as it approaches God. After death, the soul sees and embraces at a glance its past emigrations, but it cannot see what God has in store for it. This foresight is only possessed by a soul who has attained a complete union with God after a long series of lives. Do spirits who have arrived at absolute perfection possess full knowledge of the future? Full is not the word, because God alone is the supreme being, and nothing or no one can be equal to God.
So one says this foresight is only possible by a soul who has attained a complete union with God. The word here should be spirit, not soul, right? The soul, by definition, in the spirituals, is an incarnated spirit. And obviously, you're not talking about incarnated spirit here. But here really should be by a spirit. Okay, just to put our nomenclature in order here. But I think it's just the vice of language that you use works so loosely that sometimes you misuse it. And again, was the first thing that the spirits answer to the question, do spirits of the futures? That also depends on the degree of perfection. Come back to it over and over again.
Now, I have a comment, and I want you to. I'm always thinking out loud, and I want your guidance. Okay, so now I see that in the spirit world, the past and the future are kind of present. So past, present, and future is like an eternal present in the spirit world. Is that correct to say?
There are those who agree with you philosophically. There are those who disagree with you. I kind of disagree. Okay.
Okay, but
Yeah,
okay, let me tell you why I feel that this way. Because they say in 240, in 241, no, in 242, the past, when this is perceived as though it were the present, that's what this is at 242. And the one that we see in 243 also tells me, of course, that depends upon what is the degree of involvement, that also the future is seen or perceived as if it were the present.
yeah. So in 241, as perceived as, is perceived as, not is the present, but it's perceived as the present. You can go back in time in such a palpable way that as if you are living that past at that moment. That's how I interpret.
Okay, you're making a decision between perception and reality. Is okay.
Now, the reality of the past, that past is not an imagination. It's a fact, it's a historical fact, right? That you are able to retrieve because all your experiences belong to you and you have them all. If I evolved enough, we can retrieve that experience on your memory files as a spirit, if we're able to do so. And when you do so, it is perceived as the present.
So when you retrieve the past, it is
That
because
moment
yeah,
so
okay.
intensively that it feels like being the present.
Exactly. Okay, but it's like I see like a segment. Let's imagine a mathematical segment like this. So this is the past, if you're looking for this, and this is the future, and this is the now. So I'm looking at it from this perspective, then everything is like this at the same time.
Mhm.
That's how I'm visualizing this.
Yeah, no,
I don't know if I'm conceptualizing it correctly. That's what I'm thinking out loud for you, and you know anybody to comment on what I'm saying.
right, and I'm saying that you are not right nor wrong. It is the way you see that. There are people who say that time does not exist, right? That time is just an illusion, does not really exist. Everything
That's
is.
true. That is true.
I disagree, right? And there are people who are able to bring some very good arguments with their understanding. I disagree. I think time is one of the elements of in nature. It's not an illusion, not a creation. But there are those that can bring very good argument about it. When I personally disagree, and I think here, when the spirits talk about retrieving the past, is in terms of perception, not that everything's entangled as one and only. And we deal with the future, what the spirits are answering over here, that knowledge, moral, intellectual progress in here in this analogy is the tall mountain. The more you have it, the taller is that mountain. When you look up there, you can have the perception because there had to already that is going to happen, and you can have that perception so clearly based on your intelligence, its sequence of events that you can predict with such a degree of accuracy that it's like seeing the future. Like in the movie, in the book Nosso Lar, way before the Second World War, the spiritual world was very busy preparing to receive all the victims of the Second World War that was about to happen. right? They were able to make that prediction with some degree of accuracy that they even were preparing to receive the huge amount of victims of individuals who discarnate in that war and have to go back to the spiritual world. They are already ready for that because they know humans, they know the progression of events that's going to culminate on that. So the higher you are modern intellectual, the greater will be your ability to perceive the future. As a very gross example with our weather forecast today. I know people like to bash those guys, but remains great job. They are predicting things that are happening here in matters of hours now, and most of the time they are happening.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's progress, development of techniques, of technologies that allows to have that degree of accuracy in prediction of movement of wind, when it's going to go to the right, to the left, straight, yeah, the path of the hurricanes. It's so accurate today. I don't know, people like to bash or talk bad about them. If they err once and get right 20 times, they only remember the one that was a mistake, right? The 20 times it was right,
That's true. That is true.
right? But why is that? Progress. In this case, intellectual progress, advancement of technologies, advancement of understanding how wind travels, how cold air and warm air redirect the movement of that wind. It's so good.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
And it's only here incarnate. Can you imagine higher spirits having the potential they have? You'll be able to predict the future with tremendous degree of accuracy. And the more evolved you are, the better you'll be that ability to predict with pinpoint precision, so to say. But even those, no one's know what is the designs of God, what God has in plan for us. Even those higher spirits do not know that yet.
But let me interrupt. You said that we don't know what God's plan for us is, but I've learned here that the God plans for us. I've learned here in spiritual studies that the plan that God has for me is to progress and progress and progress
Yeah,
for my benefit, for my enhancement, for my own growth. So I know what God wants from me.
that's true.
Huh?
That's true, absolutely true.
Okay.
We just don't know which path you choose for us to reach that, right? It's gonna have to go on out COVID in our way to help us to progress, to us, we don't know. Is there another pandemic on the horizon to help us to progress? The last COVID brought some progress. I thought it'd bring a lot more, but we waste a great opportunity. Is gonna have to send another one, perhaps worse pandemic to us?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah. Well,
The scientists are predicting one. The virologists are saying, there is another bug out there that's eventually gonna hit us hard again. Yeah, it's always happened throughout history, right? But can we say for sure? No, that's maybe the higher spirits can say that. But that's our level. That is more change for the higher spirits, right? Even the virologists here can have a degree of interpretation of what's going to happen in the future. But for bigger things, I mean, when this planet blows up, and will blow up eventually, where are we gonna go? What's the little neighborhood God is reserving for us in his universe? I don't know. But we know that planets can blow up all one time, right? That we know. If we don't do ourselves, nature take care of it.
Hmm.
It's 7:58.
Wow.
Here. Again, for those who enjoyed, it was fast. For those who didn't, your time has come, you are free. So we stop at 43, right? Yes. I'm
Yeah.
losing track of time here. Yeah, 44 next week. Any more comments, any more questions? Before you ended our prayer? All right, so Carol, can you do us a prayer?
Sure. Thank you very much, Elmo. Thank you for hosting our meeting this evening. And thank you, Philip, for reading, and everyone who was here this evening and participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together again as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Spirit's book, Book 2, Chapter 6, regarding spirit life. When we leave the physical body, our senses will be enhanced in perception in the spirit world, and intelligence will be more freely manifested. God is limitless. The high order spirits have great knowledge as they approach perfection, but they don't know everything. Time is relative, depending whether it's on Earth, other planets, other worlds, or in the spirit world. We measure time against the backdrop of eternity. The past might be perceived as the present. A spirit sees the future more clearly as it approaches God after many lives and experiences have occurred. The moral and intellectual sides are very important factors in our development and evolution. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritus centers throughout the world that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth now as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.